All right. Welcome, welcome. How y'all doing today? Josh from KeepItTechie. You know what I'm saying? How are y'all doing today? I got a couple people in the chat. I appreciate you guys being here. Go on, hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here. Um, and on my channel, I typically talk about Linux, and I also introduce this new segment into my channel where I try to interview people that are in the tech field, and just try to get their perspective on how it is actually working in the field, and hopefully that can help people get into it. So today I have a special guest, another special guest, and it's Mental Outlaw. Um, do you mind if I don't know if you tell
You can
people?
call me Kenny.
Okay, all right, Kenny.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
that's public knowledge.
okay,
You're
all
not
right.
doxing me.
Yeah, some people some people try to keep they self anonymous, you know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to make sure. But I appreciate you being here, Kenny. Thank you so much. Kenny has a YouTube channel called Mental Outlaw where he talks about Linux as well as overall IT. Um, phones, all kind of stuff. It's a tech channel, but I'm really happy to have him here. And salute to everybody that's in the building. I appreciate you guys. But Kenny, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. It's a little cold, little dreary today, but hey, I still got spirits. My spirits are high.
Cool, 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 cool. But let me give a couple people shout outs. Thank you, Maxwell or Jordan Maxwell, for being here. I'm gonna get to your question. I'm gonna ask him your question as well. I appreciate you being here. What's up, Mitchell? Valentino. Let me see who else. Adrian X. Good to see you. Lordo 211. Hello, how you doing? And let me see. I don't want to mess up people's name, but Roblox Pro 123. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for checking that out. Oh yeah, and Kev Tech. Good to see you, man. Happy to see you in the building. But let's go on and start off by the first thing I like to do is ask my guests to introduce themselves, which we kind of did. But introduce yourself. Give a little bit about your background, as well as how did you get into the IT field.
For sure. Well, I'm Kenny, aka Mental Outlaw. That's the YouTube channel, of course. As far as how I got into tech, I mean, I've been the family IT guy since, man, maybe 9 or 10 years old. That's how I guess a lot of people get started in it. With Linux, I first got started with that. Really, it was out of necessity. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
they say that necessity is the mother of innovation, right? So I had this laptop that I got for Christmas. I think when I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and it was a cheap laptop, but it was a cheap laptop that many years ago, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm 26 now, so we're talking maybe 15 years ago. This thing had a single core, single thread processor, 512 megs of RAM, and something like 30 gig or 20 gig hard disk drive. And man, this poor laptop had Windows Vista installed on it. Now, those of you who may be a little bit younger who never worked with Windows Vista, here's the thing, right? They pretty much took Windows XP and then threw this new theme on it called Aero to try to make it look really modern and really sleek and stuff, which might have been okay if you had a desktop or even like a laptop with a Core 2 Duo. My dad had one of those that I think he ended up paying about $1,000 for, and it ran okay on his computer. On mine, it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And all I wanted to do with this laptop, I mean, there were some other things I did, a little bit of research and stuff for school, but I wanted to play RuneScape. That was like the first game that I was really into that, well, besides consoles, like I had a Nintendo 64 as well. But the first computer game that I really got into was RuneScape. And I could kind of play it if I set everything to minimal settings and yeah, like graphics and resolution, all of that to minimal settings, but it would still lag, especially if I was to go into the wilderness, right? And like those of you that know about RuneScape, the wilderness is where you can basically do PvP. So you get killed, and if you get killed, you lose all of your stuff. Well, not really. Like you gotta get a skull. So basically, If you're fighting back, then I think you can keep like 3 items or something like that. But anyway, you lose your stuff for the most part.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out a way to get better frames and not just lag and get killed in this game. So that's where I think you can really say my IT journey started, because I had to figure out everything about Windows Vista to try and make it like take away everything that was making it lag, right? So I figured out how to get rid of Windows Arrow and revert back to, I guess it'd be like the Windows 95 theme or the like Windows 2000 theme, get rid of all the effects. I figured out how to go into the task manager and kill processes. And like I figured out that you don't actually need explorer.exe to run, because that, yeah, I think it's 512 megs of RAM. So that's taken up a good portion of it. So I would kill that and do this and that. And I got maybe like 10 frames more. But then I'm like, man, I want to take it further. I want to get even better frames in this game. And that's when I figured out about Linux. So I first installed, I believe it was Ubuntu, the first distro I installed.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
where
that took
everybody
it.
start.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You Google like Linux or Linux for beginners, it'll probably take you to that page. And so I figured out how to burn that to I'm pretty sure it was a flash drive. It might have been an actual CD drive, but I'm pretty sure I had a flash drive at that time. Installed it from a live environment. Well, first I went into the live environment to make sure that RuneScape would actually run. And it did, because it was just a game that you play in the browser. And it did. So I'm like, all right, cool. We'll install this. And bam, I was running RuneScape off of that.
That's what's up.
And then, spent some time going back and forth. And then, of course, got more into more concerned with privacy as I got older, because like I feel like when the Snowden leaks happened, I'm like, obviously it's not just me that took it seriously, but kind of within my circle, I was one of the only people that took it seriously. I'm like, man, they really are looking at everything that we do, and like they backdoor all these operating systems. And I just don't like that level of access, like the government just being able to go in and do whatever. I mean, look, I'm not, building bombs in my backyard or nothing, but regardless, I don't want everything being spied on and all my information being collected. And with Linux, for the most part, it doesn't really do that.
Yeah, it's certain distros out there that may, be doing something like that, but majority, like you said, or not. So, but nah, man, I appreciate you giving that, background. I kind of started the same way, man. I was always that IT kid that knew how to get into stuff and just play around with operating systems. And I actually didn't start Linux until later on, once I got into actual job, which was kind of, it was basically my first it was my first IT job. I started as a network administrator, and the person that I was working with, he was actually running the whole network using Linux. And I was like, what is this? When I went to school, we learned about servers, server 2003, you know what I'm saying? That kind of shows my age, but that's what they were on at the time, so no, I appreciate you sharing that. But so let me ask you this, so if someone was actually trying to get into the IT field, where do you think they should start, in your opinion?
Well, a lot of people, in a way, are sort of in the IT field already, right? So I guess if you're completely ignorant, right, you're the kind of person that needs to take your computer to get it fixed by somebody else, right? Like you don't even know how to do that. You struggle to install an application on your own. I would say get the basics down, right? Figure out you can get A plus certification, the CompTIA. There's another one they have that I think is even below that, but I would say don't even bother, right? Like just go for the A plus, and if you can wrap your brain around that, then this might be a field for you to pursue. If you can't, then you might honestly want to consider doing something else. On the flip side, though, you could try programming, because CompTIA isn't like, if you're a programmer, you really don't need to do that. There are some programmers out there who are really ignorant of operating systems and like the hardware, which makes me cringe a little bit, but I get it. Like they don't necessarily need to know it. They just need their IDE and their compiler, and that's it. So you could try programming. There's really no barrier to entry as far as cost goes with programming. You can just go and download like Python is probably what they recommend for most people. That's the first. I mean, it's not really a programming language; it's more of a scripting language. But besides shell scripting, that's the first one that I got my hands on and started tinkering with. So yeah, you can do that. You can go through guides. Like if you go to your local library, you'll probably find books on it. There's tutorials on YouTube you can do. There's LeetCode and stuff like that. And then once you get the basics down, use it as a way to just integrate it into your own life. Like at my job, there's certain processes that I automate with Python. The job that I had before, I actually worked at Geek Squad. There were certain processes that I would automate with Python. And there you go. It's pretty easy. It'll save you time. And if you get good enough to where somebody's willing to give you some money to do that same thing for them, well, there you go. You're in.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. And that's how you actually get good at programming, by actually finding a solution to a problem. So, I mean, find a problem and figure out what programming language you obviously want to use, and then come up with a solution for a problem. And that'll help you actually develop your skills, because you can sit there and take classes all day on Python. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I understand how to use this function. I understand how to, invoke this. But if you don't have anything to actually, or any type of goal or solution you're trying to fix, you know what I'm saying? It's you're not using the programming language to its potential, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. And then of course there's college. Like you could go and get a 4-year degree. Even though I kind of have a bias against college, because at least here in America, I feel like a lot of the time the professors and the staff that are in college, I don't really think educating you is their main goal a lot of the time. I think a lot of them sort of use their position to like indoctrinate you with some sort of political ideology or some sort of worldview. So if you're the type of person who, number one, is disciplined, because college costs a whole lot of money, and if you go and even for 1 year and then like you drop out and you can't get through it, you're going to waste thousands of dollars. So don't go that route if you're not disciplined. Don't go that route if you can't stick to a schedule. Probably don't go that route if you're easily indoctrinated or like brainwashed by stuff, because you're just going to end up, being one of their pawns instead of actually getting a degree. And if you're going to go, take advantage of some of the things that are unique to college. Like there's job fairs that they do at college. That's something where if you're like me and you just go the certification route, you don't really get involved in a job fair unless you know people who are in college and you can try to like sneak onto the campus. And when you're talking to the people there that are doing the job fair, you just kind of ignore all the questions about, oh, like what classes are you taking? Who's your favorite teacher and blah, blah. You're like, yeah, here's my resume. Give me a job. If you can work out that, then that's one way to do it. But I would say it's more of a waste of money. It's more of a waste of time to go the college route. Just get certifications and just teach yourself, because it's so easy to do.
Yeah, and that's one thing I tell people. A lot of this information is out there online that you don't even need to go to college unless you're just one of these people that can't buckle down and focus. And that kind of ties into my next question, which is, keeping your technology skills current. Like what I guess what tools or resources do you use to kind of keep your skills, kind of current?
Probably. So it depends on what it is, right? If we're talking shell scripting, you've got man pages.
Yeah.
That's the best way to learn Linux right there, is man pages. You don't even need to go onto the internet. If we're talking Python or making a script or something like that, I think I do what everyone else does, Stack Exchange.
Yeah.
Stack Exchange, different sites where you're trying to figure out one particular thing or you're trying to figure out how to optimize one particular thing, search engine, and then it's going to lead you to Stack Exchange.
Yeah, exactly. I use it all the time, man. It's because majority of the time, um, if this is your, it doesn't matter if this is your first time seeing this problem. Someone has faced that problem in the past and have
Mhm.
at least got or at least can get you to the point where you know where to go to actually find the answer to the problem that you're facing at the time. So, yep. But now, next thing I like to ask is, which you kind of touched on already, is degrees or certifications or both. And I just want you to, kind of elaborate on it a little more if you can, because I know it's people out here that are trying to get into these fields and may want to get some your take on it.
For sure. So, I mean, it's sort of like if you're buying a car, right? Like if you just need something to get from point A to point B, and you don't got a whole lot of money, you're going to buy a Honda Civic, or you're going
Hmm.
to buy something that's really, really cheap. You can still get into a job with certifications. And like I have an A plus, a network plus, and a security plus. I haven't even paid $1,000 to get those three certifications.
Hmm.
And I have a job that is full-time remote, and it puts me into a middle class tax bracket. So, there you go. If you're, as far as like trying to come up goes, college, if you're one of those lucky people who's like, sort of a trust fund kid or something like that, or, you actually have a good resource of money. And like I said, you're grounded, you got a good relationship with your parents or community. Like you're not going to, run off to college and then get indoctrinated with a whole lot of stuff. Then yeah, you could go do that as well. But if I was to hire somebody to actually do a tech job for me, I'm not going to be too focused on you having that college degree. Now, again, that's just my bias
Hmm.
because I'm sort of against college, I guess you could say. And I've had a lot of interactions with people at my job who do have 4-year degrees in computer science, IT, things like that. And they seem to not know a whole lot. So that makes me wonder, like, what are you really learning in this school? What did you really learn in 4 years where I know this particular subject better than you just from reading man pages, right? Like, come on, man pages don't cost you any money. Getting a certification book might cost you 40 or $50. Um, there's ways to get it for free. If it's a PDF, I'm sure people can connect the dots and figure that out. And there you go. Like, you just get the knowledge. There's no reason to pay that much money for knowledge if you don't need like specialized laboratories or anything like that. I could understand if maybe you're getting a degree in chemistry, right? Like it's
Hmm.
expensive to set up your own like chemistry lab. But if you're trying to get into network engineering, for example, just configure your router, right?
Yep.
Configure your router. You can go to the store like Best Buy, and you can buy an actual Cisco router that would actually be used in an enterprise. You don't necessarily have to get the bigger ones that have 64 or 128 ports. You can just get a little 8-port one that might cost you $100. Now you have hands-on experience with configuring a Cisco router or a Cisco switch. And then if you're real cheap, you can go return it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, I definitely agree with you at that point. Like I grew up, I guess, I grew up in the South, and so one thing, a lot of parents down there always said, uh, go to college, get a degree, go to college, get a degree. And so, I did that, you know what I'm saying? And I did it a different way by joining the military. And so I was able to get the army to actually pay for my degree. But um, basically, what I'm getting to is that a lot of what I learned in college, well, when I went to for my associate's degree, that was great because I got a lot of hands-on experience. I went to one of those technical schools, kind of like IT Tech or Remington College is the name of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it
And
was
then
a
you
lot more.
transferred?
Yeah, and then I transferred over
Yeah, there
to
you go.
another to an actual online school. But I got more out of my associate's degree, to be honest, than I did in college. And so, basically, what I'm getting to is that a lot of what I learned in college, well, when I went to for my associate's degree, that was great because I got a lot of hands-on experience. I went to one of those technical schools, kind of like IT Tech or Remington College is the name of it. But anyway, it was a lot more. Yeah, and then I transferred over to than my bachelor's degree, because a lot of it was just writing papers and understanding the, I'm trying to think of the right word, the I guess the trying to understand the concepts behind IT, and writing papers on stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? But the hands-on experience actually got me the jobs that I did. So that hands-on experience, as well as those certifications, once I started getting into the certifications, is was way more valuable than that bachelor's degree. At the end of the day, it's good to have it, but
Hmm.
it's the certifications are kind of viewed more or weighed heavier, in my opinion, and it seems like your opinion as well. So cool.
Well, the other thing with
Hmm.
certifications too is you have to keep them current.
Yeah.
Like with CompTIA, the ones that I have, you have to either get what do they call it? I think it's continual education credits,
Yeah,
and you can
CDUs,
get that.
or yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, I think it's continuing education units. Anyway, you can get that by either watching like talks or going on webinars, and then they'll have like a little code that you can use to get the CEUs, or you have to just keep on advancing the certifications. Like that's what I did is I just
Hmm.
went and got the 8 plus, and then like immediately went and got the network plus, and then I think about a year later I got the security plus, and now I'm not sure what the next like CompTIA one I'm going to get is because I'm working on getting a CCNA, which is sort of like a Network Plus but on steroids. It's
Yeah.
a little higher up than the Network Plus, but that's a Cisco specific certification. So
Hmm.
technically, it won't count as points towards the CompTIA.
Yeah.
But the whole point that I'm making is you got to keep these current. Usually, in about 3 years, if you don't get something above it, it expires.
Hmm.
If you get a degree, it lasts forever. Now, you might think that that's a better value. And in certain fields, like I would imagine if you're becoming a lawyer, right? I mean, I might be ignorant here because I don't really know a whole lot about law, but I'd imagine that law hasn't changed too much over the past few decades or past 100 years or so. Tech is radically different.
Yeah.
Just 10, 20 years ago, if you went and got a degree in computer science, unless we're speaking about just the theoretical side of it, if you're talking about the hands-on like programming or you're talking about the hands-on IT, it's a whole new world
Hmm.
back then versus now. So again, if I was the manager, right, the hiring manager who's talking to these candidates who want to come in and work for my company, I want you to have a certification because I know A, your stuff's at least current to the past 3 years. B, it's the same if you go and get a certification in whether it's Florida, California, Boston, if you get that CompTIA certification, it's the same stuff. If you go to school in like MIT versus like, UC Berkeley, those are two completely different schools,
Yeah.
right? So your curriculum might not be the same. And again, like I said, there's a lot of extra stuff that the teachers and professors want to do in college to, try and teach the kids that's not related to IT. It's not related to computer science, and it can kind of mess up. At least, in my opinion, I know people would disagree with me, but it can kind of mess up the office dynamics and not make it as fun a place to work if you sort of introduce that stuff they do in colleges into the work environment.
Exactly. Yeah. I definitely agree, man. But let me see. So the next thing I like to kind of go into, and that's sort of and since you have a Linux channel and all that stuff, so I try to ask. Oh, this is one thing I wanted to ask before we move on. How's that training going for the Cisco cert? And when are you planning on, I guess, taking it, or the CCNA? If you don't
Yeah.
mind sharing.
No, I don't mind. I try to work it in. With my job, especially right now, we stay really busy.
Hmm.
My job is, I mean, it's a blessing, right? I'm glad that I still have a job because I know a lot of
Hmm.
people got laid off when
Yeah.
the pandemic started. But man, I work a lot of overtime.
Yeah.
It's not unusual for me to work like 50 plus hours. And then I've got the YouTube channel that I'm trying to grow. One of the ways that you do that is by remaining consistent
Yeah.
and uploading about as often as you can. And usually I upload a video just about every day, maybe 5, 6 times a week. So I'm trying to balance all of that stuff at the
Yeah.
same time. You know, it's tough, but I'm getting it done. I'm thinking I might actually blend the two together a little bit, since I teach people so many different things about Linux and technology in general. It might be useful for me to almost do like a CCNA guide
Hmm.
as I'm studying. I gotta obviously look over things 2 or 3 times and make sure that I'm correct on it and not spread misinformation. But that might be a smart thing for me to do.
Yeah, you should definitely do it. And that's one thing I'm actually working on. I'm I just finished like studying. I actually took the test for the Linux Foundation Certified System Administrator, that cert. And so I'm working on putting together a course and kind of documenting, all my notes and everything, the process of going through it, the process of actually studying for the certification, and then hopefully passing it. Like right now, it takes like what 36. I actually took this certification yesterday. It takes like
Okay.
36 hours for them to grade it because it's a performance based certification. So someone has to physically go in and look at the
Oh,
machine. Yeah, and that's one cool thing about this certification versus like Red Hat. Um, Red Hat certification, based on what I heard, is like the whole multiple choice, kind of like CompTIA's way of
right.
testing. This you actually go into a physical machine. They have servers that you can connect to via SSH. They have Docker containers set up and all that stuff. And I may be giving away too much information, but
Giving away the guide.
yeah, but that was part of the test. And so it was a great experience, whether I pass or fail this test. I'm hoping I passed it, but um, anyway, my whole point for bringing that up was that's something I think you should potentially do, man. That can actually be another stream of income as well, on the side or whatever. So
Oh yeah, most def. I mean, there's some people out there who are doing it. Like, have you heard of Professor Messer?
Professor Messi, yeah.
Yeah, I used a lot of his resources when I was getting my CompTIA certs,
Hmm.
and like he's got it down.
Yeah,
If there's a format that I'm gonna try to look at to basically base mine off of, it's definitely gonna be him.
yeah.
And I think he's doing that full time. I don't know if he still works like professionally, but I
Hmm.
think his YouTube and then his like he sells PDFs, like
Yeah.
notes that go along with it. I think he's doing that full time,
Okay.
which is good for him.
Hmm. Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. And so let's move on to the next section. The next thing I typically try to I go into, especially since you know Linux background or whatever, like how important Linux is with your work, and then also um I guess a little bit more about your Linux channel, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, as far as my work goes, I'm a network engineer, which means for the most part, I deal with networks and things that connect to them. And the internet is built on Linux.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All of the servers, for the most part, in between you and whatever service you're connecting, and most likely including that service you're connecting to, as long as it's secure. I know you were talking earlier about learning Windows Server, and I would just say don't use Windows as a server. That's a terrible idea. But yeah, Linux is really the foundation of the internet. So it's very important for my job. As far as what I'm doing directly, a lot of these phones that we're provisioning and PBXs, the servers that they're running Linux.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know Linux in order to be able to deal with them. Like one thing that I was able to do in my job, from time to time, I get to build a little bit of like automation scripts. So that's basically as far as my programming goes. Because I knew shell scripting, I was able to build a script that could do music on hold for us. So the way that we were doing it before, if a customer wanted to add a new music on hold, like one that they customize themselves, and same thing if they wanted to add a different greeting, because a lot of customers will go and just record their own greetings instead of using the generic ones that we offer. You had to SSH into the server, and then you had to add in those WAV files. Well, first you have to convert it to the proper format because it has to specifically be, I think it's a 16-bit mono WAV file.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to add that into it. Before converting it, you have to create a directory with a specific name, and you have to rename the music on hold to a specific name. And that takes some time if you're doing it manually. And this is just for one. So now imagine scaling that to, I think this particular task was 250 sound files that we had to upload. And then that's when I got this idea, like, I bet you I could script this. And so I created this shell script where all you have to do is point it to where the music is. You don't even have to convert it. It'll do the conversion for you, and tell it what name the music files have to be. Or you could rename them on your own. Like you can do, if they're all under the same PBX, it might be easier to do that in Vim. Just because, you know, you can do the, what is it, like the visual where you just write on multiple lines at one time. I think you could do that in other IDs as well. But Vim is just the ID I usually use. And yeah, it saved, oh man, it was something that I think originally we quoted them. It'll take us a week to do it, and just run that. It was done within half an hour.
Wow. That's what's up, man. I've done similar things for different companies, but nah, that's cool, man. Yeah, and bash scripting, as well as batch scripting or PowerShell. That's something you guys, anybody that's interested, you know, that's one thing you want to learn. That can significantly help your job. It can, you know, make you, and not to, I guess, try to get praise or anything, but that can make your job a whole lot easier, and people will recognize it, especially when you do something like what you did, how you took something down from a week to, you know, 30 minutes using a script. You know, that'll make you shine in whatever position, especially like if you're in an entry level position. That's one thing I've done by automating certain processes or scripts or whatever to take a process. And you always want to look for something you can actually improve upon. So if you go into a new job, and that'll kind of, I guess, not really bring attention to yourself, but people know that you can bring something to the table. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when it comes to any job, right, you're getting hired to provide value to that company, right? So, you know, if you just kind of boil it down to the most fundamental aspect, let's say that, you know, my employer is going to pay me $50 an hour. Okay, they're not going to pay me $50 an hour unless I can provide more than $50 an hour worth of value to that company.
Exactly.
Right. So this is useful as far as getting raises, and, you know, it gives you the leverage there. But the other thing is when it comes to like getting laid off, because I've been laid off from jobs in the past. Like when I was 19, I was working at this property management company, and, you know, I was in charge of the utilities, basically making sure that anytime a maintenance guy had to go out to a place, that water, electric was on, and that he could go do their job. And then when a new tenant moved in, I had to make sure that they converted the stuff over to their name, because we ain't going to give you free electricity and free water. So, you know, they would get a month to do it. And then if they didn't do it within that time, I called this is when I was living in Atlanta. I'd call like Georgia Power or whoever out and be like, hey, cut them off. You know, we ain't paying for them no more. So, yeah, I got laid off from that job because they figured out a way to automate it. And the thing is, if I would have figured out the way to automate that myself, then I would have been in control of that automation. Like, just like where I'm working at now, there's aspects of my job that I figured out how to automate. And it's allowed, in a way, it's allowed my department to justify its existence, because there used to be more people working in my department that did get laid off, partially because I think part of it was they've been there a little bit longer, and so they were getting paid more, because at my
Mhm.
job they usually give you a raise every year, just from merit. But they weren't creating scripts and like programming, if you want to call it that. There's really only two people in my department that actually do any kind of programming beyond like just running basic commands in Bash. And so we have that leverage, right? Because we're the ones maintaining these scripts. Anytime someone has a question about it, we're the ones who are answering that question. And so that allows me to keep my job. And like I said, it gives me leverage for asking for a raise or anything like that, because you always want to be in a position when you're working at a place where they need you more than you need them.
Exactly.
You always want to keep it that way. It might sound cold-blooded, but look, this business,
Yep.
that's how it is. In the real life, when you grow up, there's no handouts.
Yep. Exactly. That's so true, man. Like, I mean, they can't afford to let you go. Even if they
No.
they think they can, or if their budgeting looks a certain way, they can't afford to let you go. You know what I'm saying? If you put yourself in that type of position. So I definitely agree with that. Now, let me ask you this. You kind of spoke about um automation. Have you ever used, as far as your networking job, have you ever used like Ansible or Puppet or anything like that? Is that something that is,
Um,
you know what I'm
no, I
talking about?
haven't used that.
Okay.
No, 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 I'm not familiar with those.
Okay.
What are those?
Ansible is basically an automation tool that can be used across different devices. You can even automate. It even ties into Cisco stuff. So that's what made me bring it up. Um, that may be something you want to look into. I know you don't have much time, but Ansible is one of those tools that you can just automate certain processes. Like it can SSH into multiple servers at a certain time. And I'm gonna just use this base example, but SSH into 20 servers at the same time and update them, or change a
Okay.
configuration file, and you basically have an Ansible server that will talk to the or push out the commands to all the servers underneath it. You know what I'm saying? That makes
Yeah.
sense. So yeah, like if you have some new, I don't know, configuration you want to put in the SSH config or whatever, you can write the playbook. That's what they call it, a playbook, and then it'll go
Hmm.
out and update all those servers for you. It's an automation tool. And
Oh, that's
Puppet
cool.
is the same thing. I haven't looked at Puppet, but Puppet is the same thing. So, um, but yeah, that was one of the
Okay.
questions I was going to ask you about IT automation. Have you experienced that, like any of those type of tools, I guess, in your position or not? Or if that's something y'all might implement in the future. I don't know.
Well, at my job, there's a lot of the tools that we're using are just created in house.
Mm-hmm.
So this sounds more like a suite of tools, which not to discount it, definitely sounds really useful, and I'll have to look into it. But there are scripts that I've created and scripts that other people have created, and then there's an actual program that someone made for doing the provisioning process, where you can pretty much take what we would call a cut sheet, where you've got all the people that are going to be at a particular location. You can even have multiple locations on there, because we do support some enterprise customers,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got locations all over the world, all over the US. You can put where their location is, what their username is going to be, first name, last name, email. You can put the type of SKU that they're going to use, which basically determines what voice services they have, because it's a unified communications platform. Like that's the actual product that we're really selling, as well as support. Like we sell support to people too, for that product. But so it can do video, it can do audio, it can do group chats, everything like that. So the SKU determines how much you're able to do. You can determine the person's rights. So are they going to be an administrator, meaning can they go into other people's stuff and look at their recordings and hang your phone up, things like that, or are they just going to be a standard user who only has control over their own things? And you just put that all into a CSV file, and then you can upload it, and it just does it all automatically.
Okay.
So that's probably the biggest form of automation that we've done so far. My stuff that I've created is mostly Python scripts and shell scripts to do sort of like what I was just telling you with that music on hold, where instead of doing that manual process where you SSH into the server and then you go into that customer's PBX directory and upload everything there, you can just batch upload MP3s or waves, doesn't really matter what format it is, into this default folder, and then it'll automatically, you can either rename it ahead of time or you can just type in the prompts for what the names are going to be, and then it'll automatically convert it, give it the name it needs, create the directory under the customer's PBX, and then put it in the place where it's going to be. And then it'll also commit it for you. And then all you have to do is refresh the portal and test it, because we have like a GUI system where you can actually, it's similar to Ring Rooster, if you've ever used that, where you can actually drag and drop the different sound files in and create this whole tree of a call flow and test it to make sure that it's actually working. So yeah, like now the testing process is the longest process of that whole thing instead of actually putting it in place.
Okay, cool. Now, it's one other thing I wanted to ask you as far as a lot of things I've seen on your channel kind of deal with Gentoo. And so my first experience with Gentoo, some people call it Gentoo, was a dollar application. Now, does that tie to y'all PBX system, or I mean, I don't want to.
No,
Okay.
no, my boss. So he knows that I use Linux, and he uses Linux as well.
Okay.
But he uses Debian,
Okay.
and I don't actually use Gentoo in my like professional job. I use Debian as well, and
Okay.
then Windows 10. But he messes with Linux outside of work as well, and he always laughs at me for using Gentoo, because he's like, man, why would you deal with that thing? Why would you even bother with that?
Yeah.
Which I should probably make a video explaining why it's worth it to, or it can be worth it to mess with Gentoo. But I'll give some reasons right now. So Linux, like there's this meme in the Linux community you probably heard of where people say it's actually called GNU/Linux because Linux is just the kernel, but then you've got the GNU core utilities that it comes together and actually makes it a functional operating system. If you really wanted to use that though, you should really call it GNU/Linux/systemd, because 99% of Linux distributions out there are using systemd as an init system.
Exactly.
Gentoo is one of the few the few distros where you can use something other than systemd. You can configure it to use OpenRC, which is what I use, or you can configure it to use runit. And there's a lot of legitimate reasons to be against systemd. The main reason that I'm against it though is because it's something that's different. I don't like, Linux is supposed to be like the Wild West of operating systems once you get into it, because you can put in whatever you want, you can put all these different pieces together. But the fact that almost everyone out there is using systemd, this init system, which isn't really just an init system because it does a whole lot more besides just being an init system, it kind of bothers me a bit that it's taken over the whole Linux community. So that's reason one that I use Gentoo. And reason two, another reason why people who get into these sort of like distro war arguments, whether you're using Arch Linux, Debian, Linux Mint, you're using binary packages. So you're not compiling Firefox from source. You're not compiling Chromium from source. Somebody else did it for you. And almost all of these guys are compiling them the exact same way with the same flags. So if somebody's trying to say like, oh, I get so much better performance on Arch Linux versus Linux Mint, that's just placebo. You're literally using the same exact package. Maybe it's slightly faster if you don't have as because like on Arch, for example, you only install the packages that you want to use. But it's like on Linux Mint, if you're really so bothered by a default package being installed, just remove it, right? Like it's not a big deal. But on Gentoo, you're compiling everything yourself. You're
Hmm.
setting up your use flags. You're setting up all your different compiler options yourself. So, like on my Gentoo system, for example, I've got Firefox compiled without the GNOME flag, without the KDE flag, without basically any other um, desktop environment flag other than XFCE, because I do switch to that sometimes. But for the most part, I use DWM window manager that's written in C, and you edit it directly through the C code instead of it having its standalone configuration file like i3. So yeah, my binary is unique to all the other 99% of Linux users out there, and that gives you two advantages. One is obviously you can make the performance be better. Not so much with removing those specific desktop environment flags, but if you were to use compiler optimizations like O3 and there's Graphite, and there's another one that's for Intel processors that's escaping me right now. But there's these optimizations that are considered unstable, so you usually don't see them in things like Mint or Debian or the Just Works distros, as I like to call them,
Hmm.
because they're supposed to just work.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna do something that could potentially break a package. But something like, I think it's 20. I did a video about it. Where like 25 or 30% of all the packages available on Gentoo, and Gentoo has, I think, just as many or maybe the most packages available for it than any other distro, just because of the nature of it. About 20% plus of those work with all of these optimizations. So you can compile programs in this way. You can compile the system itself. So that would be the GNU core utils, OpenRC, the kernel, all of those with these optimizations, and it'll still work. So performance, that's one reason to compile things yourself. And then number two is for security. So again, if we're talking about exploiting a binary by doing maybe something like a buffer overflow, where you're trying to get basically like some code to operate into a different memory address than it's supposed to, which can potentially then give you access to the system. If you know that memory address on Linux, let's say it's a vulnerability in Firefox, and you know that the Linux Firefox binary, it is in this particular memory address, that's going to work on 99% of the Firefox binaries out there. Probably won't work on mine though, because mine's different.
Hmm.
So it might, but it's not going to work exactly the same way. So maybe if someone's trying to like hack me, for example, through a vulnerability in Firefox, they've got to be a little bit more elite to pull that off versus maybe like the script kiddie way, where it's just going to be a script you execute that goes for that particular memory address and then does its thing.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, they stuck at that point. Yeah.
Right. And then that's another reason to again try to use something other than System D, because if you were to find an exploit in System D, well, you've conquered 99% of all the Linux distros out there until that patch gets applied. But I don't think there's a whole lot of hackers that are actually trying to exploit OpenRC.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let me ask you this. What is your overall reason for using Linux on your in your personal, like I guess personal? Well, you kind of explained
Mhm.
that, but I just wanted to get like an overall view of, and really it's to kind of highlight the privacy aspect. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so besides all the technical aspects, like getting better performance in games or just getting better performance overall, yeah, it's the privacy. So if you're using something like Windows or Mac OS or any other proprietary system, you don't really know what's going on inside of it, right? Like we know now with Windows 10 that it's doing this telemetry and it's gathering all this data and sending it off to Microsoft. And Microsoft stores it. And because they are a company within the jurisdiction of the United States, they are obligated to give that data over to any 3-letter government agencies that might want to look at it. So CIA, NSA, ATF, and then I won't get into all the reasons why you shouldn't trust them, but just learn some history, right? There's all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't have this inherent trust of the government or especially these 3-letter agencies. So if you are doing your computing on a system that you don't have control over, and you don't have control over a proprietary system, if anything, it has control over you, because some other developer somewhere is creating this program and they have a certain intent behind it, right? So if we're talking, Microsoft Edge as an example. So that browser on its face, its intent is to help you surf the internet. But then there's sort of a covert reason for it, which is data collection. Okay, this is to collect data for Microsoft. And data is one of the most valuable assets in today's economy. I mean, if you look at a lot of these big companies, I think it's what is it, like the FANG companies, like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google or Alphabet, the parent company of Google. Those are some of the most valuable companies in today's world, and they mostly profit off of data. Like Google, as an example, they haven't even had products until fairly recently. Before, their product was like the search engine, Google Calendar. When I say products, things that you actually go out and purchase. They had Google Chrome, the search engine, Google Calendar. These are all free, right? These are all free programs. So if it's free, at the end of the day, you're going to be the product. Your data is going to be the product. And they can use that to create a blueprint of you, like who you are. And in a way, these companies know who you are better than you know yourself, and better than like even your spouse might know you, right? Like, people talk about how maybe their spouse or their girlfriend or whatever knows everything about them, but they don't really know everything about you till they've seen your internet history.
Yep.
Right. And that's before you go and clear it, and before you try to wipe out any of that. Take a look at someone's internet history, and that gives you an idea about who they are. So that's reason one why I really enjoy using Linux. And then also because you can take it further. So just like we were talking about earlier with me trying to play RuneScape on this cheap little laptop, I could only take Windows so far and play RuneScape. It gets to a certain point where, you can't disable things because you need to have system level access to it. You can't really get that on Windows. Or, I can't go in and change the source code of Explorer.exe. Maybe now we could, that we have access to the Windows XP source code. But back then, I wasn't able to do it, and I didn't even know how to do it. But now on Linux, it's like, okay, say that you're really stressed for resources on your laptop, and you can't even run a desktop environment. Or maybe you're running something heavier like GNOME. You can switch from GNOME to KDE. You can switch from GNOME to XFCE. Or if you really want to go like, full crazy mode with it, you can install DWM, i3, or just a window manager. And that's going to free up that much more RAM, that much more CPU time for you to do what you need to do.
Yep. Yeah, that's cool, man. I definitely appreciate it. Yeah. And you guys go on and sub to Mental Outlaw's channel. I really enjoy his channel. I got it up right here on the screen so you guys can check it out. And I've been putting a link in the chat. But it was another question I wanted to ask you that actually came in on a super chat. Mitchell Valentino, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. But what inspired Mental Outlaw to start a YouTube channel? I don't
So
want to take up too much
basically,
time. I don't want to take up too much of your time, man. But yeah, let me
oh
just
no,
ask
that's
that
good.
one question. Okay,
It's Sunday. It's Sunday, man. I'm cool.
cool.
Yeah, so I had a lot of friends that were getting into Linux, and I was always the go-to person that they would ask. And so, like, I'm the kind of person where I don't really like to always go to someone else and ask something that I feel like would be a dumb question. I go to a search engine first, or I try to find a book or something on the topic. So the fact that so many people were asking me about this about Linux, how to do this, how to do that, I was like, I should just create a YouTube channel to show people how to do it, because I'm thinking in my mind that the resources aren't out there, right? They must not be out there. There must be a would be the word for it. There's a need for this knowledge. So I was like, all right, sure. Let me go ahead and make a YouTube channel and start putting this stuff out there. And so I did. And I gotta say, it's worked. I mean, I've been putting Linux videos out for about a year now, and managed to get up to like 35,000 subscribers. And I really appreciate all of y'all for subbing and making it worth my time to do it. All the comments that I get from people saying that I helped them out and appreciate my work. But yeah, it was kind of like we were talking before we went live, where when I was learning on YouTube and the internet, I noticed that there were two camps of people when it came to learning tech. There were either people that were really well spoken, but didn't actually seem to know the technical aspects that much. Maybe they don't work in the tech field, or maybe they have some other kind of interest, but like IT, computer science isn't the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got other people who do really know the subject well, they work in it, but a lot of the time, English isn't their first language. A lot of people from India, for example, I know it's a bit of a stereotype, but if you work in IT, you're gonna meet some Indian dudes who are real knowledgeable. Like
Mm-hmm.
they know their stuff, but if they're explaining it to you face to face, can be a little hard to understand them. And I feel like I have the best of both worlds there, where I can explain things to people in a way that they understand, and I actually understand it enough to give you some knowledge that's not just phony baloney, not real, going to cause more trouble than it actually solves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's similar to why I started mine, just to be another face, especially since it's I don't know, it's people that don't look like me too much that talk about Linux. So I kind of wanted to, you know, I guess not really be the face, but just be another person out here that other people can relate to. You see what I'm saying? That makes
Oh, for
makes sense.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm kind of country, to be honest. I'm from from Louisiana. Most people call us down there, country, or you know. So just try to relate to those people as well. You know what I'm saying, by putting the information out with my spin on it. So, but no, I definitely appreciate you coming through and doing this, Kenny. We definitely gonna have to do it again, and and just talk about Linux, or talk about something in the future. I definitely appreciate you coming on. Um, do you have any other things you want to put out before we close it down?
No, I'm glad that you had me on, man. I can do an interview. Like I said, this is my first kind of interview for anything like this, besides just trying to get a job to get some money.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I was glad it could be here.
Oh,
If I end up becoming one of those popular, Linux creators, or whatever direction I end up taking the channel in, you got you've got that down. You were the first person.
appreciate it, man, and hopefully I'm up there with you, at some point.
For sure, man.
Nah, but like I said, I definitely appreciate you. You guys, check out Mental Outlaws channel. I just put the link in the chat again, and also, just check him out, man. He has a lot of great, Linux content, well, tech content in general. You know what I'm saying? So, please check him out. You know what I'm saying? And if you're new here, just go on and subscribe, hit the bell, and all that stuff that people say in their videos, so you can follow me, and I'll keep doing these tech interviews. I got a couple people lined up pretty soon that I'm trying to bring on as well, that are in cybersecurity. So I know that's one of those areas, kind of like a buzzword: cyber this, cyber that. So I got you know, a guy that I'm gonna bring on. He actually owns a business in cyber, but I'll talk about that
Nice.
later. Yeah, but nah. Hey Kenny, hang on for a second. though. I just wanna talk to you after the fact. But I appreciate all you guys for being here. Hopefully, I was able to get Kenny to answer some of you guys' questions. And I hope this will help some of you guys that are trying to get into the IT field. So I definitely appreciate you guys for being here. And you guys have a good day. Thanks.